Nice.
So yeah, man, awesome. This is cool. I saw your post, and I was like, yeah, I like having conversations.
Yeah, exactly. I figured, my wife has just been saying like, you have too much random shit to talk to me about, I'm sure there's other people that'd like to talk to you about certain things. And then like about a week ago, I was like, hey, I did I took the advice that you gave me. And she was like, oh God, what advice was that? I can't
Oh
remember.
no.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I set up a link so I could just start talking to people. And I already have a bunch of people on LinkedIn that are ready to chat. And, we'll just chat about some random stuff, see if they want to talk about cannabis, the industry, whatever the hell they got going on. And she was like, oh man, I forgot that I gave you that advice, but good, go for it.
I'm glad you chose that one and not one of the other ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm probably going to steal the idea. To be honest, I really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a great response from all over the people, from people that are in the industry that kind of want to plug their own kind of like company or their founding and stuff like that, to other people that are just like, hey, I saw your post. I like talking about random shit. You want to talk about something? I was like, sure, let's go for it. All about networking.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in, man. I've got till like 2:30. I can probably push it a little bit. So yeah, what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, you clearly have potato chips on your mind. That was a very interesting response.
Yeah, I was trying to be a little funny about it, but I mean, I do fuck with potato chips heavily.
There, I am a big fan. I found out about like a year and a half ago. I'm like lactose intolerant kind of thing, so I just don't eat
Oh,
dairy, which has severely impacted my chip decision because I realized that all my favorite chips were like cheddar flavored or cheddar sour
yeah,
cream or
sour
cheddar
cream and
this.
onion, creamy dill.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh no, I can't. So then I was like, wait a second, like I gotta figure out what chips. So like salt and vinegar chips, I can go for those ones. Some barbecues, and then just like classic, just like crunchy potatoes are great.
Oh yeah, man. I've been on a health kick since the new year, which I mean, all that really means I'm just going to the gym again, and I've severely cut back my potato chip consumption. So it's pretty sad state of affairs in the old Phelan house right now.
That happens. So we are part of the White Ash group, right? So you're doing like the recruiting.
Yeah, exactly. I know I've reached out to you about a couple of jobs before, um, but yeah. So I guess I can take some time to plug that a little bit. We're cannabis recruiting, Canada, U.S., Europe, Australia. We've got a couple clients as well. Um, there's 8 people now total in the company. There was 3 of us that kind of started it back in 2018. It was pre-legalization in Canada when we started. So we had a few medical cannabis clients that I I moved down to the States in 20 end of 2018 to kind of try to copy and paste what had been working for us in Canada and the US, which was successful. Our business is probably around 50-50 Canada US now,
Nice.
which is nice to get those US dollars in our Canadian account. Um, my wife and I have recently just moved back to Canada, though. In end of November, we moved back. So I mean, there was all sorts of reasons to that we don't really have to get into, but yeah, I mean, we do everything, anything from quality assurance technologist at 50K a year up to managing director or C-suite board level roles. Pretty much anything and everything you can imagine, and anything that's cannabis or ancillary. So we've got clients in vape hardware and logistics companies or sales agencies. Anyone touching the plant or touching someone who touches the plant, essentially.
Nice.
But yeah, it's not exactly super exciting. We don't have to dive in too much on it. But I figured if it's my opportunity to pitch, yeah, that's what we do. It's awesome. This is pretty much what I do all day. I have video calls with people and get to know them and chat and tell them about the industry and absorb their information and then flip it to the next person. So it makes myself seem smarter. But yeah, it's great. I mean, I was in construction for most of my adult life. Retired from that in 2021 to do this full time. So I'm super happy I don't have to bust my ass anymore. I get to work from home, and my wife and I travel a lot. Where I was working from Costa Rica, working from Belize, Guatemala, Spain, Prague, Vienna. I mean, I've worked from everywhere. So
Nice.
it's definitely been an improvement in my quality of life. But I mean, it's stressful. You know what the cannabis industry is like. I mean, it's never easy. Nobody pays their bills on time, and people are very fickle. It's a lot different than the construction industry. It's when I had my own company doing masonry. You show up, you do the job, and you get paid. And in cannabis, it's you gotta meet the client, then meet them again, then take them for dinner, then meet them in Vegas, and you got to meet them again, and then it's 7 more touch points, and then you get terms signed, and then you do the job, and then you have to chase them to get paid. It's
a hassle.
I mean, all that is to say, though, I mean, I feel very blessed, and I'm super happy to be in the space. A lifelong cannabis user. I got into a lot of trouble as a young person because of cannabis. So it's I'd be lying if I didn't admit that part of the thrill I get is from doing it all legally. And we bought a house in New York, we bought a house in Spain. It feels good, definitely feels good to be making money legally at the thing that I got me into some trouble as a youngster, and also was, I mean, for ages of 14 to 30, it was my whole essentially identity and personal culture. So, yeah, I guess that's
what kind of trends are you seeing in like hiring in like cannabis?
Well, oh man, we get such a good insight into what's going on in the industry. We can just kind of chart it with, when we first moved down to the States, even though I was in New York, all our business was in California. It was all West Coast. You saw that move into, the Midwest, as kind of Illinois and Michigan had their kind of, flares and whatever lightning in a bottle that they had for a little while. Then it moved down to Florida, and Florida was, they were crushing it on the medical side, and everybody was saying, oh, they're going to go wreck any minute. They're going to go wreck any minute. So everybody was pouring resources into there. And now it's kind of, it's traveled this loop of, and then now it's come back up to the Northeast. I mean, New York is, almost all of our U.S. work is in the Northeast now. New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts is still chugging along. Illinois is since they went wreck, they've kind of pulled some of their rear ends out of the fire there. Definitely Northeast is where it's popping, and with any new market, any newish markets, it's a lot of sales roles.
Yep.
You guys are kind of always the first wave of attack, and fairly or unfairly, the first ones to get blamed if things don't go well, as well as I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah, it's been there.
So it's definitely a lot of sales jobs. It depends. In the U.S., it's so fickle. Every state is different, and every state, that a state could have a good year and everybody's buzzing. Everyone thinks it's going to be the new golden goose, and then the bottom falls out and they're selling 8s for 10 cents, and like it's crazy. Canada's a little more, there's less companies. We know them all now so well. It's a more dependable kind of source of income, and the trends there are they go through waves. Everybody needs salespeople because everybody had a bad quarter and they let go of their salespeople, and now they need new ones. And then, everyone has a good quarter, so now they're opening up a new facility, so everyone needs new growers and new QA people. And the States is definitely, it's more money. It's a little easier doing business in the States too. People are a little more willing to give you a chance. They're willing to kind of sign the terms and say, show me what you can do. Canada's a lot more courting and relationship building. It's, people are, it's culturally, you think about the two cultures, Canada being a little more reserved and, square, whatever you want to say, that applies to industry and business as well.
Makes
It's a
sense.
little more effort to get things over the line. But then once there's a lot more repeat business. In the States, it's a lot of shit. We just opened. We need all these people. Boom, you crush it for this company, and then you don't hear from them again for 4 years. And it's very dependent on what's happening in the legislature, what's happening in the state Congress or whatever. It's very dependent on what happens. You get one bad newspaper article, and a company lays off fucking half their facility. It's a volatile business we're in, particularly doing anything that's commission based. It's commission based. Selling cars is hectic as enough, but when you throw in cannabis and the legal stuff and companies going bankrupt, it's definitely keeps us on our toes.
Have you seen any companies that are able to kind of like avoid that like boom and bust cycle, and just kind of like what kind of, you don't need to name names, but like what kind of stuff are they doing different compared to the groups that are like hiring and firing on a regular schedule?
I think it's just like anything else. People seem to forget that cannabis is, and I know it's such a cliche to say, but cannabis is just a business. It's
Yep.
the graveyard of failed businesses is littered with the corpses of companies that had one good quarter and hired 100 new people and built a 1 million square foot facility because of one good quarter. It happens in tech. We see it happens all the time in tech. Companies have one good year, they hire 1,000 new people at their fucking data farm or whatever, and then their shareholders don't like all this new salary on the books, so they lay off 300 people. That's what cannabis companies need to avoid. And our most successful clients who we've had for years, who are hiring a few people a year through us, the rest organically, are the companies that grow slowly. They have strong branding. People seem to forget that you can have a good cohesive premium discount and craft can all have a cohesive brand story, can all have a cohesive brand message, and those are the companies that succeed. They grow slowly and sustainably. They have a cohesive story, a cohesive brand, and they read the trends. They read the room and see what's going on. It's understanding demographics too. Like, just because you're 90% THC crazy shatter butter is doing great in Colorado doesn't mean you should fucking put 10 million into a facility making that in New York. It's every demographic's different. And doing market research before expanding. We have one of our clients in Massachusetts. I'm not going to call them out or anything, but they're doing great because they instead of just expanding, so now they're in New Jersey, they're in Pennsylvania, because they took their time, they read the room, they learned the market. In New Jersey, carts and concentrates and stuff, people like that stuff there. So there's no point building a 1 million square foot cultivation facility pumping out flower when you can have a small, lean facility that pumps out concentrates, and that's where the bread and butter is. So companies get too excited when they make a little money and they make stupid decisions, and it's not just cannabis. It's everything, and
people just get excited.
Yeah, exactly. Throwing more bodies and more money at problems isn't always the answer. It's invest in research, invest in good salespeople. That's what we tell people all the time. If you've got a $5 million budget for this expansion project, pay a fucking sales killer $200,000 a year to come in and crush that for you. Get someone that knows how to do, read data charts and understand demographics and can map out the whole state and figure out areas to target and where to do activation. There's so many things that companies just don't do. They do things backwards. They get a manufacturing partner and fill out the facility and start making goods before they have a sales team and before they have any sales projections or anything. And I know it is a nascent or new market in some regards, but these people in leadership positions aren't new. A lot of them are coming from
traditional business. Yeah.
They should know these things, and it's frustrating to see, especially when there's good companies making huge blunders. It's market's not learning. Like we see California, made the same mistake as what happened to Canada, and then New York has made the same mistake that happened to California. And it's like, you guys, we have test cases for this. Like,
we can avoid these things.
Yeah, it should be easy to avoid this stuff. But anyways, there's lots to learn always, and I talk to people from, facility maintenance guys, who are pushing brooms and tightening bolts all day, and I talk to, CEOs and COOs, and everybody has insight into what's going on, into what's happening, what the problems are. So, I think as recruiters, we get a very good insight into what's happening in the industry, not just by who's hiring, but, where people are hiring, what roles they're hiring at, what people are telling us about what's going on, what's going on at their facility. You know what I mean? If somebody hollers at me, he's a master grower, and, 2 days before, his company put out this report saying they crushed their EBITDA and they're, everything's rosy. And then, I get on a call with him and he's like, yeah, we're bleeding money, or they're going to let people go. And it's like, oh, well, that's much different than what they're advertising, So we definitely get a lot of solid insight into what's going on.
Nice. And when you guys are like doing your market research, like what channels do you guys look for? Like, where do you guys go to like seek out that information? Is it just talking to people, or do you have like publications?
Or we've got a lot of contacts now, but what's this? There's this newsletter that we signed up for. I can't remember. It's not MJ Biz. It's essentially it updates us on every new license holder across all the states. We can break it down into states. It's everyone who's applied for a license, everyone who's got their license. So that's kind of where we look when we start hunting. If there's a lull and we need to hunt, that's usually what we do. Because there's early license applicants, or even people who've recently been, they're not the greatest target because they don't even know what they don't know yet. They don't know what they need yet. They don't. So it's early stage is good, but it needs to be developed enough where they know that they need a head of security, or they know that they need a whatever. So it's definitely a juggling act, trying to figure out who's where and in what position and when they're going to be ready to hire, especially in the US, because there's so many new license holders. Canada, things are starting to stabilize, and the companies are the companies essentially. There's not a ton of new activity. There's a lot of craft people that are coming up and stuff, but in the States it's very fertile. A lot of word of mouth too works for us. Companies. We've been 7 years now. We've been in the industry, and which is a long time, and we know everybody. Everybody knows somebody who needs something. Who we can scratch a back here, they can scratch our back there. We can make an intro. You're a vape cart company. Well, we can introduce you to our client who has a shit ton of biomass. Maybe you can help us. Once you get that contract, you're probably going to need a production manager, et cetera, et cetera. So there's tons of little ways to work it, and especially in cannabis. It's got to be quid pro quo a lot of the times. There's got to be some back scratching, and you do a lot of favors that you don't get a favor in return, but eventually you do get one in return, and it kind of pays the way for the others.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that here in Illinois, especially where there's the last 2 years, we've seen just an explosion of new brands and new products and just more products in the dispensaries, but the outlets and the dispensaries are not necessarily expanding at the same rate. And so you're just seeing the same clientele. Basically, you're adding a couple more customers, you're adding a couple new dispensaries here and there, but you're adding exponentially more product, more brands, and it just kind of gets crowded, and it's hard to kind of be that. And if you're one of those brands, which I was in the past role, just kind of well, why would you take you on? And it's well, what do you have to offer? You're just another, distillate-based gummy or distillate-based edible. Leadership oftentimes forgets that. It's yes, we're selling a product, but there's 40 other options, and guess what? They already have enough on their shelf. And finding that kind of where you fit in, and it's this big.
Yeah, and I don't know how exactly it works in Illinois, but I know in Massachusetts, there's the MSOs will kind of curry favor with each other, and Curaleaf will put Trulieve products in their dispensaries. If Trulieve puts Curaleaf products in their dispensaries, and it ends up, so you're like getting just points of distribution, but it's, you realize that half your points of distribution are just, favors that aren't really, it's not like you're crushing sales figures. It's so, I mean, when half of your distribution points are just kind of bullshit handshakes, it's like, where do we go from here? And I mean, that's what happened in Ontario, in Canada. There was, I mean, way too many options, way too many products, way too many dispensaries. I mean, it was impossible to stand out. And we see that happening. It's already starting to happen in New York. You know what I mean? There's not enough dispensaries for the amount of products. There's tons of flower, tons of edibles, tons of everything, and there's only, I think, like 300 or 400 dispensaries open in New York State still. And I mean, there was like 28 for the first like year. It was like, and all of New York State. It was crazy, and there's still a lot of things to figure out, and there's restrictions on what you can do as far as events, and Red Bull stands out because Red Bull does crazy fucking Red Bull shit, and there's restrictions to how much of that you can do to try to make yourself stand out from the pack. And I mean,
even just getting the community support. The Red Bull goes to a town and they say, hey, we want to do a competition where we launch people into your lake. And they're like, hell yeah, let's go for it. A cannabis company says, hey, we want to do a picnic just for industry people. They're like, no, you're going to be smoking weed there.
We're not having any of you bad seeds. That sounds unsafe.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is definitely some change, I think, happening toward that. And people, like I saw in Minnesota with their adult use, that they're going to be introducing an event and organizer like license. And so just kind of like building that into like the state programs. How they actually work out in real life, we'll see how that works. But that is such a huge component of the community of cannabis, and just being able to smoke together. And like if you visit some, if you're out of state, like where can you actually legally consume as well? Like you can't consume in your hotel, you can't consume in public. You have to find some random friend to go to their like living room to smoke weed in, like to smoke illegal stuff.
Yeah, I know it's there's still a lot of work to do, and a lot of it too is going back to the companies that succeed. Less is more sometimes. You don't need to have 3 products or 3 SKUs in every product category.
Yep.
Nail down like 5 that are awesome, that are your brand, that have a coherent message. That's how you cut through the noise. It's like if you have edibles and drinks and pre-rolls and infused blunts, and they all have wildly different packaging, wildly different messages. I mean, how are you going to ever get loyal customers? If everybody, all your products have like a car theme or whatever, like Mustang Chronic and fucking Camaro Kush, whatever, you know what I mean? Then whatever it is, that's how you build loyalty, and how you build, repeat customers, and how you stand out. I find companies don't do that. They have, everything's different. Their website will be like luxury leather and fucking wispy smoke and black, and then you get their bags and it's like blue puffy clouds with like a cartoon smoke in. It's like, what are you guys doing? What is your message here? What's your brand? And that's a huge mistake companies make. They try to be everything to everyone, and that doesn't work.
I've said if you're a product for everybody, you're a product for nobody. Unless like you're unless you're water or like rice or something like that. Like you're not a universal product. Yeah. I think like there's definitely, like we've given like Red Bull as an example. They're one of my favorite companies like worldwide. They found that niche, right? They're like, okay, we're gonna do a carbonated energy drink, and guess what? We're gonna double down on action sports. And everyone's like, that is such a niche category. Like, what are you talking about? And now everybody knows what Red Bull. People even associate the brand more than the product. Like it's very cool.
Sure. I mean, like people, it's like Kleenex. Like people will call other energy drinks Red Bull. Like they pass me a Red Bull, and it's just a generic energy drink.
Exactly.
They crossed into that like craft dinner Kleenex role.
And I think there's some cannabis companies are definitely leaning into it. I think one of my favorite examples here in Illinois is like the Dog Walkers brand. I think their branding is spot on. It's, of course, they're launched by a large MSO, so they have the backing with it. But when they first launched, it was kind of like this blue and green or blue and orange and white. It's kind of like very dull. And they revamped it with like their green and gold and just like doubled down on actual like dog walking customers. And like they put dog stickers in there, and then their merch is like a dog leash and like a little poop bag kind of thing, and a hoodie that has awesome. Like, it's like, this is actually like embracing it, and like walking around Chicago, I see like the WAG like logo like boxes, and people put like the dog walker pre-roll sticker on those ones. It's like, oh, that is so cool, like the dog walker sticker for the dog walker who's walking your dog. And I think that like more brands just need to, like, instead of trying to address everybody in the whole market, try to find those people that are the most loyal, win them over.
Find a thing and fucking lean into it. That's what you got to do. I totally agree. And maybe that will all come, and I think a big part of it too is the community events, like you said, like, I'll think of alcohol and I mean, tobacco less so now, but like a huge part of CPG and alcohol marketing is hosting and sponsoring massive events. You know what I mean? Like, that is where tons of their marketing budget goes to. And I mean, until that's, we're seeing it up in Canada now. Their cannabis companies are able to sponsor like music stuff, which is cool. You know what I mean? And that's like, once that corner really turns, I think you're going to see like, Northwestern University frosh brought to you by whatever, like dog walkers. And like, once we start seeing that stuff, I think things will really turn a corner too, because that's how you get, I mean, that's what cigarettes did.
They just normalizing it.
NASCAR and sponsored beach volleyball, and you know what I mean? Like, it's like they sponsored everything until it became normalized.
Exactly. And I remember like I was telling a friend back in like yesterday about how like when I first started in cannabis, like 2016, selling like working in dispensaries and stuff, I'd tell people what I did, and people were like, that is illegal. What are you talking about? You can't, you're telling me you sell weed? I was like, no, it's I work for a dispensary. And they're like, that's illegal. No, it's a license from the state of Illinois. We get inspected every month. Like, I talked to state regulators, and now to the point where it's like completely like, oh, you work in cannabis? Like, oh, that's awesome. Or they have like opinion about like the actual industry versus just like, oh, it's illegal. Very interesting how it's coming. I think that in the future, I hope that the industry gets more normalized and just becomes more of a traditional industry. Right now, like everybody treats it so special.
Sure. Like my family still doesn't think what I'm doing is a real job. Like, and it's partly because they don't know what recruiting is, but it's more so because it's cannabis recruiting, It's like, oh, so is that still a thing? You're still doing that? I'm like, yeah, I've been doing it for almost a decade now. We got married, bought a house. Like, it's a real, oh, really? But like, what?
You're gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, you're gonna keep doing that little thing. It's and I mean, I think that it's probably be not till the end of our careers, that it starts to become fully like saying you work for Anheuser-Busch or work for Post Cereal. You know what I mean? It's going to be a while till it becomes that.
Yep, agreed.
So listen, I have 3 minutes here. I can maybe push it a bit, but was there anything specific you wanted to touch on before we wrap?
No, I'm all good. I got the 10-minute warning from Zoom anyways, so yeah, I'm all good.
Okay, awesome.
Definitely great chatting with you.
Yeah, this was great. Let's do this again sometime. Maybe we could avoid the cannabis industry next time, but I mean, I don't mind. It's all I talk about anyways. But
definitely.
And yeah, I mean, if you're ever looking for a job, you know who to holler at.
Hell yeah, definitely.
Okay, man. Well, thanks a lot.
Have a good one.
You too. Take care.